All right. Man, the internet is buzzing right now, and the world is really buzzing about the French military being kicked out of Niger, Africa. So in this video, we're going to sort of go over a series of events that led the French to get kicked out. But more important, we're going to look at what the outcomes probably are going to be. The United States, I think, is actually put in a very bad position right now. As much as we are cheering and people are happy that the French are leaving, there's a lot of reason and evidence to believe that this actually will cause more chaos in this region of Africa. And so we'll go over all of this. And if you're watching this live, thank you for being here, and I will be posting this video. Now, first things first, this is confirmed, being reported everywhere. France to pull troops out of Niger following the coup. We'll just read this real quick. France will pull its soldiers out of Niger following a July coup in the West African country. President Emmanuel Macron said on Sunday, dealing a huge blow to French influence in the counter-terror operations in the Sahel. And quite honestly, that is what I think is going to be a massive, massive issue. Again, hello everybody. Thank you for being here. Everyone is cheering in Niger, but I don't think people will be cheering in the next few months, especially in this region of the Sahel. And we'll go over all of this. Macron said 1,500 troops would... My stuttering problems. Macron said 1,500 troops would withdraw by the end of the year, and that France and former colonial power Niger refused to be held hostage. Okay, so this isn't necessarily new breaking news for Africa, as we like to generalize Africa. We need to make sure we understand that there have been coups spreading across this particular region of Africa called the Sahel. The Sahel is a belt that cuts all the way across central northern Africa over here. Unironically, maybe there's a theme here, a lot of these countries were former French colonies. And so a lot of people say, well, you know, this is what happens to the French. And so maybe there is some reason to believe that too much French influence has pushed many of these coups to kick the French out. That's what a lot of these African nations are saying. Now, here's where the issues start to come. This is ECOWAS, the collection of African states who all work together economically and to provide security for one another. Coalition of countries can be a great thing or a bad thing. You have NATO. You can see they're doing the work they're doing for Ukraine. Sometimes the EU is not great. Hey, $10 donation. Thank you so much. Now that France is gone, do you think the U.S. and junta will be like, we cool, and the U.S. will go back to the status quo? No, I don't. And I will show you why I think the United States is actually in a bad position right now. And we'll get to that here in a few seconds. But thank you so much for that $10 donation. Okay, first thing we need to understand is that ECOWAS, this collection of African countries, has now fallen apart. I mean, this collection here means nothing almost. You have Mali and Burkina Faso have deemed to back Niger if there is military intervention. And the French kept saying, we back all these ECOWAS nations who will fight for Niger. We will go into Niger. And the French were being a little too hostile, in my opinion, and wanting armed conflict to intervene in Niger. And so now you have Mali, Burkina Faso, who still have this treaty where they are going to work with Niger internally within ECOWAS. And guess who's in Niger right now? The United States. So the mission for the French essentially was to be in Niger and to fight terror organizations. That was the initial reason why the French moved to Niger. Because what you need to understand is this. Mali kicked the French out, and the French had nowhere to go. So the French said, well, let's send our forces to Niger since we're already in Africa. We have French influence. Let's go to Niger. Niger was not that receptive of this. And to be honest, Niger was not always as receptive to the United States flying drones as well. Nonetheless, Niger, the French have never had great relationships as far as this mission of fighting a counter-terror group. And this guy right here, French ambassador, I think was used as a political pawn by the French to just sit in Niger. For those of you who are not aware, this guy just sat in the embassy when they asked him to leave countless amounts of times. And then the president of France is like, hey, this guy's being held hostage. And the junta are like, no, he's not. He can leave. And he didn't leave. Wild. So again, you have all these like instigating issues here where the French really had no choice but to leave. They sort of put themselves in that situation. Now, here's what I think will happen to Niger. And if you've been following this channel, you already know I was about to pull up this graph. This is the most telling graph and the easiest graph to go by that shows you what happens when the French or security forces leave a country. Now, I'm not here sticking up for the French. I know they have their own issues and they have their own status quo. 2020 Mali, the French were operating in here, the UN at full force, 376 violent attacks. 2023, literally tripled. And this is what we know. This is what's reported. And along with that, you have Wagner Group, who is currently actually being ambushed left and right in Mali. But there is a lot of Russian influence here. But Niger is going to follow suit, without a doubt. The more and more security forces you pull, and the more that Niger was focusing on kicking out the French and not kicking out the militant groups, this is what's going to happen to Niger. And unfortunately, this is actually going to have a lot of issues for Europe as well, because now thinking about it, there is a oil pipeline that cuts through the center of Niger from Nigeria. Someone said, sounds safe to me. Another reason why the French had no choice but to leave Niger is because the airspace was closed to all French aircraft from its airspace, which means that the French couldn't even do any sort of drone operations. They couldn't fly a helicopter in to even evacuate. So this left the French sort of waving the white flag of, okay, once you do this, it's over. This is what every country does whenever they're about to instigate their own armed conflict, or they're trying to show a little bit of force here that we mean business. And of course, once you shut down the airspace, you can only do so much. And to be honest with you, even the United States felt the effects of a shutdown airspace only a few weeks ago in Niger. They weren't even able to fly drones, and they still barely are. And yes, please like the live stream. Now, speaking of the United States, this is what I think is going to happen, and I'll do a more in-depth video about this because, I mean, the saga in Niger doesn't end here. I think we'll be hearing more from the United States. The U.S. military, with the French leaving, they're on their own now. They're going to be smack dab in the middle of the Sahel, the most dangerous place on Earth, the most unreported place on Earth. And the United States is also being told they can't attack, they can only defend. So if the United States can't attack and they can't do their job, what's the point of being in Niger? They're not able to actually be the U.S. military. They're not allowed to be the strongest fighting force in the world. They're just the strongest defenders in the world now. And so, again, it's not like the French and the United States were doing all these missions together, but it definitely helped the United States out to have another big military asset who's willing to share information or to give you an idea of like a little more security within the country. Something else we need to understand, and this might be the saving grace for the United States, is that the junta liked the United States. I don't want to say love, but definitely liked. That was the biggest difference between the French and the United States. For those of you who are not aware and you're new to this entire saga, a lot of these junta members are all military. Generals, colonels, lieutenants, and all of these guys have fought side by side with U.S. Special Forces or have trained with U.S. Special Forces and the U.S. military. So this right here was the major factor as to why the United States really was able to stay in Niger and why the French were not. A lot of these guys got a little jealous and a little pissed off when the French came in because they felt a little undermined by Mohamed Bazoum, who's currently still captured and being held captive. And so, yeah, understand this. The junta, they respect the United States because when the United States initially came in, they weren't coming in for uranium and other assets. They were coming in for a fight. Again, here's a picture of training. And I was going to play you guys a few clips and videos. But yeah, the United States' role in Niger more or less is to train. There are direct action missions, the famous mission of Tongo Tongo ambush. That's evidence that we were boots on the ground. We were seeking a fight. But more or less, the operation in the United States is, of course, drone operations. But drone operations are useless. Like, okay, the enemy's over there. All right, bye, enemy. You have to be able to attack the enemy. So if the U.S. can't attack the enemy, whether with assets on the drones or whether with boots on the ground, I mean, the United States is almost wasting their time and money out there at this point. Something else I want to mention that the United States we never officially called it, when I say we, the United States, Pentagon, never officially called Niger a coup and respected the junta leaders because the United States, I think, saw what the French were doing, where the French were like, this is a coup. We stand with Africa. We need to go fight the coup, the coup, the coup, the coup. The United States is like, it looks like a coup. We think it's a coup. It appears to be a coup. And you can go back and watch some of my videos where we go over all this. But we're not going to call it a coup because the second the United States called it a coup, legally, we cannot work with the coup. I mean, that's not, the United States has laws in place against that with the Pentagon and etc. However, something else we did different that the French should have done is that the United States was stern on Niger. In fact, we even pulled a little bit of aid, but not our humanitarian aid. So I think that was one part of the story that was never really covered, was that the United States actually pulled a little bit of aid, but we still were providing money kind of to the coup. Humanitarian aid money, if you will. I think that went a long way with Niger understanding, like, okay, the United States actually cares. They keep their money where their mouth is. They still want to work with us. They're going to give us money. They're going to keep their assets here. But as far as the French goes, the French have been there since they're a colonial era country, all right? About 100-ish years. In the 60s, Niger became a free country, but nonetheless, there was so much French influence that it never really left. As far as the United States is concerned, we're not here to give you U.S. influence. We're here to provide you with security and to fight the enemy. We just need an area to do it. The next biggest thing that I think saved the United States' butt is that we left the capital. This was a big indicator that the United States probably knew something that many people didn't know. The French stayed in the capital, Niamey, and the United States left the capital. And the initial reports was that the United States said, well, we're just doing some precautionary measures. Also at this time, there was a French diplomat who was captured and being held as a prisoner. He was eventually released. But nonetheless, the United States was not about to fall for another Benghazi or another Afghanistan, so they got the heck out of the capital because I think there was an assumption that the French are going to go all in and try to do some sort of combat. So again, the United States kept covering their butts. But now we're at a point where we covered our butts so much, but what do we do from here? As far as the French is concerned, the amounts of riots, the amounts of protest, again, they were getting kicked out regardless. When this is your embassy, when your embassy looks like this, I think that means that the people don't like you. And there's really no recovering from this. I don't know what the French could have done to stay. And understand this, the French are technically kind of staying when it comes to like relations with culture and education, humanitarian aid. But as far as a military presence, which was the biggest mission of the French, your embassy can't look like that. So if anybody ever wants to get into politics or wants to be an ambassador, that's when you have to leave. I'm no expert, but I think if your door's on fire, it's not good. Someone said French fries. Wild. And of course, the last reason why the French had no choice and to get kicked out was because of this relationship between the French and Mohamed Bazoum. Mohamed Bazoum's on the left, the French president's on the right. To be fair, I will give the French a little credit that they really stuck their neck out and said, we will save this guy. We recognize this guy as the president. More so than the United States and the rest of the world. Everyone was kind of shocked how far the French were willing to go to defend this guy. But Niger said this is a French puppet. We don't trust this guy. And ever since this guy was put into power, the French have only gained more power economically, and the French have been doing whatever they want. According to the junta, apparently the French also were not really doing their job when it comes to security. You never heard those words talked about the United States. So again, this to me is the last reason as to why the French had to get kicked out. There was a lot of support for Mohamed Bazoum, and nobody else was supporting him. Now, as far as the United States is concerned, where's this graph at? I have a picture. I think they have to get out of Niger and go to Nigeria. Not the same countries, for those of you who are not aware. Reason being, I don't think the United States will operate in a country that's a little too dangerous and they don't have another superpower there to back them up. Because, again, if something pops off with the United States, at least they have a QRF, a quick reaction force, through the French. And as much as we like to pick on the French and the French retreat, they're actually really good at their job in Africa as far as combating terror groups. They've been doing it for a very long time. French Foreign Legion, there's a few documentaries on it. Not saying what they're doing is right, but they're good at, they can put up a good fight. And in my opinion, the United States will move to Nigeria, a way safer country, a way stronger military. And when I say safer country, I also mean like economically stable. Another thing we have to realize is that right now, Niger's door is wide open to corruption everywhere. Russia can come in. We already know that Mali, the militant groups in Mali, are crossing over into Niger, which is going to cause even more corruption. If the United States can't do anything, they have to leave because it's only going to get worse and worse. And now it's going to look like, well, the United States can't even do their job. Look, the country's going downhill. Look at the United States. So realize that. Anyway, that is what's going on. I hope I could update you guys a little bit. I'm sure we'll get more news, and I'm sure we'll get a press conference. But it looks like the French will be leaving at the end of the year. ECOWAS hasn't said anything yet. We don't know if there's going to be a military intervention still. I would be shocked if there's a military intervention soon because Mali and Burkina Faso are ready for a fight. And for sure, the United States will be getting out of there if that's the case. So, again, just wanted to make this video for you guys so you understand where the United States is and where the U.S. military, in my opinion, will have to leave just like the French. Not forced to leave, but it would probably be in our best interest. So, yeah. All right. Love all you guys. Thank you for being here. I'm going to post this live stream. Go send your comments over on the posted video so I can go respond to them. Check out what you guys have to say. And, all right. We'll see you all later. Much love and peace out.